Welcome back, everybody. This is the Barbell Benders Podcast, episode 6, I believe. We're here with Alexandra Chavez, a member of the La Tech powerlifting team. Alexandra, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
We're getting by. We're trying to get in training in this crazy time.
For
Also
sure.
dealing with school too. But yeah, why don't we go ahead and jump into how your origin story and how you got started in powerlifting?
For sure. Yeah. So almost my whole life, I was in any sport you can name. I mean, middle school and high school, I was in it all. But I did competitive gymnastics and competitive cheerleading for about 13, 14 years. And I think that's where I get a lot of my strength from, or at least that's what I attribute it to. So freshman year of high school, I was on our diving team. It wasn't something for me. I ended up really not liking it, and I really wanted to try out wrestling. And so I walked over to our athletic complex, and I found whatever coach was sitting there. And I was like, hey, I want to join the wrestling team. Who's the coach? How do I get in contact with him? He laughed at me for a good minute and told me we didn't have a wrestling team. And then the powerlifting coach was walking right behind him at the same time and told me I had big legs and that I should join the team. And so I had a friend, a really good friend, who was already on the team. She told me to come to one of the morning practices. I went. I remember I deadlifted 185 and all these coaches freaked out. And now I think about it and I'm like, I don't know why anybody was freaking out about anything. But I did that, and the rest is kind of history. It became my life and a big part of
So for a long time, being active has been a big part of your life. No matter what it was, what sport, you always wanted to be doing something and competing.
For sure.
Absolutely. So I was looking through your open powerlifting, and you did a lot of meets throughout high school. How many years of high school did you compete?
I competed for 4 years.
Okay, wow, that's a lot. So you started out, and were you already one of the people that were up there in strength?
Yeah, so I'm from South Texas, and our division that we competed in our region consisted of a lot of strong people. And it kind of grew as I progressed within the sport. It wasn't just me making gains, it was everybody. But I guess I made it to state my freshman year. I was the first one from our school district to do it. I bombed out at that meet. My powerlifting coach had no clue about anything going on. I didn't have a clue. I mean, I was 14 years old. So I guess I was kind of up there because I made it. But I started progressing after that year. That's when I really got a fire lit in me almost. And I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be the best at it. And I'd always told myself, I'm going to be the first one to get a powerlifting scholarship from where I'm from, the Valley. I was like, I'm going to be the first one no matter what. And that was my main goal. And so that's what I worked through all throughout high school. And with that became this huge part of my life. And so I just started progressing. I don't want to say more than everybody else because everybody was progressing. But I mean, I was the only person there in the summer. I was there in the morning. I was in there in the afternoon. I was the first one in, last one out. And it's become this. So, yeah.
So you were doing everything it took just to, because like you said, you wanted to be the best.
Yeah.
So you went the extra mile. You did the little things.
For sure. Yeah.
And obviously, you've made it pretty far in the powerlifting world so far, and I'm sure you've still got more big goals that you're working toward.
Yeah.
But it's that drive that you just talked about that a lot of the people that get to the top have.
Yeah.
And it's what you have to get there. It reminds me of when we talked to Jesus a couple weeks ago. He's also from Texas.
For sure.
And Texas is a huge powerlifting state.
Oh, yes, we are.
Yeah, and we're from Mississippi, so I'm sure that in Texas there's, 100 times more lifters than here, and they're
I just
10
say we're
times
a
stronger
different
on
breed
average.
down here. I mean,
Absolutely.
we are a different breed over here.
I think I was looking on open powerlifting one day, and in one day in Texas there were like 60 meets.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's incredible to see how many people, especially like even in high school, like when I started, the sport wasn't really known, and compared to when I was a senior, how many people like joined the sport and how like it became like so progressive so fast. So yeah, I think we're in the USAPL. I think we're like the second most like numbered state. So yeah.
Wow. And would you attribute the popularity of powerlifting in Texas to success of lifters in Texas, or just extra, time and money from school spent on it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely, when I was younger, it was I knew everyone very local. So, I mean, like to name somebody, like Martha Salaya, she was somebody that I knew through equipped high school powerlifting. And then, like, she went off and did all this awesome stuff. And so I think it has a little bit to do with the popularity. But like I said, like I just think it's a different breed for a lot of kids. And I was one of them. I wasn't good at all the sports I did. To be quite honest, I wasn't good at all. I did basketball, I did softball, I did volleyball. I was terrible at all of them, but I was good at powerlifting, and it's something that I could get good at and that I could learn. It wasn't, I didn't know how to make a layup or something, and I practice and practice and practice and practice. But with powerlifting, I trained and I trained and I trained. So I just feel like that in itself contributes to the popularity it's gained. Yeah.
Would you say that since you are a young woman, was there a little bit of a gap there? Like when you started, people were like, "Why are you doing this? This is a man sport." Or what was your take on that?
Yeah. So it was, like I said, powerlifting in my city wasn't, and especially like in like that region that I was in, wasn't popular for women. And sure, I got like a lot of guys who asked me why I was doing that, asked me if I was on testosterone and other very like just things that you're like, no, like,
what do you take?
Yeah. I had somebody
Just assuming
come up to
that you
me
can't
one
be
time
strong.
and
Yeah.
said, "Do you like lifting weights because you want to look like a man, or what is it?" And I was like, "No, like it's quite the opposite. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're big and muscular, but at the same time, yeah, I definitely have had people come up to me and ask me questions like that. And especially when I first started, and now that powerlifting's so popular, and I think almost that like people think lifting weights is so cool for everybody. It's not like that. It's every girl lifts now. Every girl is squatting, benching, and deadlifting. It's not, I'm gonna go to the gym and go run on the treadmill or something like that. It's every girl wants to lift. And so at first, yeah, there was definitely that, you're a girl, why are you lifting weights? I lifted with our football team is what I did.
Wow.
I lifted with the football guys. The football guys all knew who I was, but at the same time, I was on the field on Friday nights cheering in my cheerleading uniform, and then the next day I was in the weight room getting after it. And so it took a little bit for people to understand why I was doing it, and not that I just wanted to be a kind of meathead type of guy, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm sure that environment of working out with the football team also added into your success, because being
for
with
sure.
A football team, they're going to push you hard just like anybody else.
For sure. I grew up with brothers, so I think I've always had the mentality, and sorry for this, but I've always been a hard ass with everything. And so it was almost like, hey, like, I can do more than you, I'm going to do more than you. And it was almost like a competition at the end of the day, like who's gonna be better, who's gonna have the better total. And so it goes back to like, that's what kind of stemmed like the fire I have in me for it.
And that's kind of the way with all of powerlifting is it's really just you, the weight, and whoever you're competing against, no matter what the outside circumstances or
Yep.
factors are of anybody's training or anything.
And I want to say this too. You're training with the football team.
Yeah.
A bunch of people think that you're a woman, so you have to train differently. You
Yeah.
train the exact same.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that. If you want to get stronger, squat, bench, deadlift. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, guys.
No, for sure. My powerlifting coach was just somebody they pulled from the football team. And I attribute all my successes and my strength to him because he taught me everything I know. But we kind of learned it along the way together because, he didn't know anything about powerlifting and neither did I. So when people say, who was coaching you and how did you go to Worlds your first time? And it was like, it was our high school football coach that was coaching me. And, I attribute, like I said, all my success to him. So, yeah.
So can you take us through your, I guess, post-high school lifting, mainly your national, international competition journey?
Yeah, so I guess starting with international, I was 2017, I think, is my first international meet. So I go back to saying that I was in every sport growing up. That had a lot to do with my parents. They wanted us involved in everything. My dad is my biggest fan in anything I do, whether it be at the sidelines or in front of a rack while I'm competing. And so my sophomore year, he made a kind of a deal with me, and he said, if you get third place or you place in the top 3 at state, I'll take you to high school nationals in 2017. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it, I swear. And so that year I ended up getting third at state. And so I registered for a USAPL meet in San Antonio that Wes Zunker was hosting, the coach of UTSA. I lifted at that. I couldn't tell you my numbers, to be quite honest, but I lifted at that. I qualified for high school nationals, worked my butt off for high school nationals, and that was actually 2 weeks after my state meet my junior year. So it's kind of funny how everything happened, but I didn't have a clue of what USAPL was. I didn't know that there was national teams. I didn't know anybody competing in USAPL because that part of powerlifting wasn't introduced to where I was yet. And so I used to train in a bench daddy in Texas high school powerlifting. We're allowed to use those. So those are like the slingshot shirts. And in USAPL, you can't do that. And I found that out 3 weeks before I went to nationals. And
Wow.
so my coach was like, well, let's get you in a super katana. And so I got in a super katana 3 weeks before nationals. As you can imagine, not the best decision I've made in my powerlifting career. I trained in it, and I raised money to go to Scranton, Pennsylvania. It was my coach, myself, and my dad. I raised money to get both of us there, and I was competing against Jordan Panton, who's a really good friend of mine, and I'm sure you guys know who she is. She's incredible. So I was competing against her. That's when weight classes for high school nationals were still, the 67.5 kilos. So that was the 148. So they still went by high school weight classes. And I remember I would always track Jordan's numbers through Powerlifting High, which is something Trey Cunningham did in the 2014 to 2017 era. And it was just a list of all these high school powerlifters and what they were doing every week. And so I would watch my name go up every week, but I was always behind her. And so I was like, I need to beat her. I need to know who this girl is. And then I ended up meeting her at high school nationals, and now we're really good friends. But I remember I was terrified. I walked in. I had no clue what to do. I was a fish out of water. I mean, probably the scariest powerlifting meet I've ever gone to. So come the day to compete, I had a game plan. I had written out all this stuff. I'd made a spreadsheet for myself. I was like, I'm going to win. I'm going to kick ass. It's going to be great. That's not what happened, but...
I like the mindset though. You go in saying, all right, I'm going to win. I'm going to win this.
For
At least
sure.
you had the plan.
Yeah.
And so I ended up meeting Jordan that day. Super sweet girl. I was like, oh, now I can't want to beat her because she's so nice. Coach and I had no clue. There was another girl from Texas there. Her name's Maddie Graham. She doesn't do powerlifting anymore, but her dad was her coach, and they really helped both of us kind of figure out, like, this is the warm-up room. Like, you have to submit your attempts here. You know, a bunch of stuff that, like, we didn't do in high school. I ended up on my squat opener breaking, like, the Teen 2 American record, something. I don't remember what it was, but I broke that, missed my next 2 squats because I obviously didn't know how to squat to depth, because in Texas high school, they don't make you squat to depth. So, and that's no shot at anybody. It's just the judging is different. Mm-hmm. So going on to bench, have my super katana on. I absolutely hate it. And I don't remember what I was opening up with, but I get under the bar and I get my lift off, and the bar immediately collapses. And I mean, I scream. And there was just like a pop in my shoulder. I really didn't know what was going on. I was freaking out. I was crying. My coach was freaking out, and I'm the type of lifter that gets really bad meet anxiety. So we just thought I was getting myself worked up. So I go out to do my second attempt. The bar completely falls on me again. At this point, I'm freaking out because I'm like, I did not come all the way to Pennsylvania to bomb out at this meet that I spent this much money on. Like, I want a place, you know. This is what I came here to do. So I think some coach came up to me and was like, maybe you want to, like, move your grip in a little bit. And I was doing max grip, you know, everything. So I get under the bar, and I can barely move my arm. So I don't know what's going on. I get under the bar, and I move my shoulder in, and there's this huge pop. And I just let out the biggest scream ever. And the head ref goes, start. And I, with everything I had, grinded that lift up. And I want to say it wasn't even 200 pounds, right? But I ended up not bombing out. And after we took off my bench shirt, we realized that I had dislocated my shoulder and popped it back into place.
So I was dislocated shoulder?
Yeah, it was my right shoulder. I dislocated it. I was black and blue. I was freaking out. My coach was freaking out. My dad was freaking out. We ended up dropping my deadlift opener about 25 kilos because I was like, at this point, you just need to stay in the meet. That's like the number one goal. I ended up getting all 3 deadlifts. I placed second behind Jourdain, who had probably like an unofficial deadlift world record at that meet. I ended up getting second to her, and I was pretty bummed out, but at the same time, I was so happy I finished. The next day, I get a text or a Facebook message from Kurt St. Romain. He was the U.S. sub-junior, junior world team coach at the time. He asked me for my age and my name and my email, and he kind of told me that I was the first runner to go to Worlds for the 72 sub-juniors, and I was like, what's Worlds? What's a national team? Like, I mean, like, what is that? He kind of told me about it, and obviously I was elated. I mean, I could not stop talking about it. And so I get back home. I can't move my shoulder. I'm basically broken, is what I was kind of saying. And I didn't get in contact with him again until about 4 weeks later when he told me, he was like, you need to compete at Open Nationals because I feel like somebody's going to take that spot from you. You know, somebody's going to out-total you. And that's something I couldn't do, you know. I couldn't pay for another meet to go to. I didn't want to go through prep again. You know, my shoulder was messed up. So I sat on my computer in the middle of May and watched the whole Teen 2 sub-junior girls, 72 girls lift. And nobody out-totaled me. There was one girl who was very, very close to it. I was sitting on the edge of my chair. I was so nervous. My parents were really confused. I mean, they didn't know what was going on. So nobody out-totaled me. And then I remember the date because it's my brother's birthday. It was May 28th. I think it was like 6 a.m. I was getting ready for school, and I got a Facebook message, and he says, hey, I just want to let you know that you made the team. We're not going to release anything yet, so don't put us on social media, but you're the 72 representing us. And I have not ran faster than I could down my stairs to tell my mama. I mean, I was crying. I was so happy. I was the happiest person alive. And so, yeah, I trained under Kurt, who coached me. for that meet. I trained under him, and I went to Worlds. My first experience out of like at international meets. I didn't know anybody. I knew one junior lifter, kind of, but I didn't know anybody else. And now, you know, all those people that were on the team that year are some of my best friends, some of the people I talk to, I mean, every day. Um,
And that
and
was in Estonia, wasn't it?
no, this was in Orlando. This was in 2017.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this was in Orlando in 2017. It's funny that my first Worlds wasn't out of the country, but I make fun of that enough. Um, I didn't have a fantastic meet. You know, I didn't do anything superb. I broke my American record on squat again. Almost bombed out on bench. You'll hear me make that joke later. I think I always almost bomb out on bench at every meet. But it was just such a fun experience. And I think that's what made me want to do powerlifting so much more, was that experience that I had at that meet. Like I said, like I met some of my best friends. And so I placed second to a girl from Germany. But I didn't even care that I didn't win. I was just so happy I was there. I was so happy I had the flag wrapped around me. I was so happy I got to say that I competed with the U.S. team. Like, I mean, it was awesome. Yeah, so that was my first international meet. And then right after that is kind of when I was like, powerlifting, like I need to be so serious because I want to go to school for this. So I was going into my senior year. I was already kind of talking to some schools about scholarships and recruitment and stuff like that. Then, I mean, when was this? 2018. I prepped for 2018 nationals at the same time I was prepping for my senior year of state. I ended up bombing out on squat that year at state. Probably the most devastating thing for my little high school self. I thought it was the end of the world. And it wasn't. And, you know, I learned that very quick. I competed at nationals in 2018. And this time I was competing for the junior team spot. So because my birthday's in October, I was technically a year younger than everybody competing in the junior, but I fell into the group that had to be a junior again. So I was competing against collegiate lifters. So that year, the girl who got the spot was Cassie Carlton. And I didn't beat her total by anything. I had a really bad meet that day, and she ended up going to South Africa. I had got offered an alternate spot for Bench Worlds that year, and I declined it because I was going up to school. And so, yeah, that was my first international experience and kind of me out of high school transitioning into college.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
So you talk about how you always talk about your parents, your coaches.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to have a team behind you?
So in high school, we definitely had a team, and I realized really quickly I would get frustrated a lot because people around me didn't take the sport as seriously, and I had to like learn for myself that not everybody was going to be passionate about it like I was. This wasn't everybody's life to them. This wasn't what, like, you know, woke them up in the morning every day. But it was nice to have people who, you know, were cheering me on. And then going to Midland, I mean, that was such a different experience for me because everybody had that passion. Everybody had that drive. Everybody wanted to win. And so having a team behind me is important, but having my coach and my parents and my closest friends behind me is way more important to me. I'm with Zach Cooper right now, and he's my coach, and he's been my coach for over a year. And I mean, we've gone through an extensive change in like me as a lifter, but I always talk to him about how I know if he has my back, and I know if my best friends have my back, and I know my parents have my back, then I'm going to be fine. And that's in lifting and everything else in life. But yeah.
So you just mentioned that Zach is training you now. How does training now compared to when you were in high school?
Oh,
I know you with your high school coach and everything.
Oh, it's so different. My high school coach used the 5-4-3-2-1 method. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. And it's something that worked with me for a while, but it was also something that was so beginner based that once I started getting to that more elite level of lifting, it didn't work for me anymore. I was plateauing. I really wasn't increasing my gains as much as I wanted to. So I went around with a bunch of different coaches. Kurt St. Romain coached me. Tim Anderson obviously coached me, the coach at Midland. Now I'm with Zach. And his training is a lot different. So I never used to do volume. I couldn't tell you what volume work was until I got to college. I thought it was silly, to be quite honest with you. I was like, why am I going to do powerlifting cardio? I was like, I hate this. But then I started with Zach, and I realized really quickly that volume was something that I really needed to increase my gains. And so I was on a plateau probably from my senior year of high school until this past year, where like I just wasn't increasing at all. My total was not going up as much as like it should have been, or if I would, or like I like to. And then I got with Zach, and we started doing a bunch of volume work. We started changing things. I mean, like one thing in specific that like has just like really changed the game for me. My deadlift. I'm a horrible deadlifter. I hate deadlift. If I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't. But something really cool that Zach does with me is I don't train sumo deadlift, and that's what I compete at. I don't train sumo deadlift at all until I get into gear. And so I do conventional, and now my deadlift is incredible because of it, but that's just like a little tidbit of something he does that I would have never thought of doing. You know, I never touched conventional deadlift because it was never something I was going to focus on. But when I got with him, I was like, wow, we're doing all these different things. You know, we're focusing on specific muscle groups, but it's not even that. Like, I'm conditioning myself to be able to, like, hit sets of 12. Because before, like, I could barely do sets of 5 without, you know, being out of air. So, yeah, it's definitely changed a lot, and it's changed a lot for the better. And that's no offense to any coach I've ever had in the past. I think it's just getting to learn me as a lifter and being able to tell that to my coach. And so the experiences I've gone through have helped me do that. Yeah.
It's like a form of periodization. Like you have these times of higher volume, you have times of lower volume.
Yep.
Once you get used to that lower volume, you need something to stimulate your muscles. Your muscles got used to the lower volume, so you need to have a little bit higher volume program. And now when that stops working, then you might have to go to a lower volume approach.
For sure.
What your coach did that's perfect. That's exactly what you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing, because I know the majority of what you do is equipped, right?
Yes.
I saw a couple raw meets on your open powerlifting,
Yeah.
but I know in Texas, equipment is a lot bigger than anywhere else, really.
Yeah.
And so you have a choice of being in equipment, but really not if you want to be competitive.
Yeah.
What drew you to the equipment in the beginning?
So that's all we had in high school. That's all we kind of knew. There was and there's still no raw division in Texas high school powerlifting. But it was incredible to see. I remember the first time I put on a squat suit. I think my raw squat was maybe like 275 pounds, maybe, right? Like, let's say that. And the first time I put on a squat suit, I think I squatted 405. And that was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You're a girl. How are you doing that? And I was like, wow, this is cool. But with that took a lot of me learning and a lot of me looking up and a lot of me talking to other people who are in the powerlifting community on how to utilize gear. And I haven't strayed away from it and gone only raw because I think I'm really knowledgeable in how to use it and how to utilize it in the right way. And so that's why I've stuck with it for so long, because I love raw lifting. It doesn't put nearly as much stress on my body as equip does. I can tell you I can barely walk when I'm in an equip cycle, but it's the fact that, like, you know, I love having like the cuts on my legs and the cuts on my arms and like, and it feels weird to say like I enjoy the pain, but at the same time, like, it's so worth it. You know, I remember the first time I ever put 500 pounds on my back, and I was like, I would never be able to do this raw. Let me preface that, ever, I promise you. But putting it on and like having somebody like strap you into your suit and like barely being able to walk, like there's something about that really drives me. And I couldn't tell you what it is, but that's why I've stayed with it for so long. And the minute that I stop feeling like that is when I'll go completely raw.
Wow. Yeah, it's a certain feeling when you get into equipment for the first time and then subsequent times after that every time you get it on, you learn a little bit more about it, about how it works. Over time, you get better with it, and then just that you can load up more weight than you would be able to raw. There's just that adrenaline rush of putting 50 more pounds on your back than normally you would be able to.
For sure.
I think y'all are gonna get me to do equip now.
Yeah.
Y'all convincing me now.
Oh,
I can
you
beat
really
equipped.
should.
Albin's
It's so
never tried
fun.
it.
You'll make it seem like a lot more fun.
It is.
I didn't really get into equipment until I got here last year. And by real equipment, I mean like Titan stuff. Because in high school we had some flimsy equipped suits, but
sure.
they weren't anything compared to what Titan is, and we couldn't wear bench shirts.
Oh, wow.
For bench.
Okay.
So none of that. But I didn't. When I got in it here, and the first time I tried it on, I was like, I want to do this. This is fun.
I feel like people are either like they put on gear and they love it, or they put on gear and they're like, I can never do this again. Please never try to put me in anything like it.
It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to a young woman getting into powerlifting?
This is an interesting question. Do it. I mean, like, don't worry about how your physique's gonna look. Don't worry about if men are gonna look at you at the gym, or if anybody in general is gonna give you a dirty look at the gym. Do it if you want to do it for yourself. I feel like powerlifting hasn't only made me strong, like, physically, but it has made me a lot stronger mentally. So do it. I mean, like, who cares what people are saying? At the end of the day, it all goes back to what's going to make you happy, and that's why I've stayed with it so long, because it continues to make me happy. And the minute it stops, then stop it. Then don't do it anymore. But if it makes you happy and you enjoy doing it and you like seeing the progress, then keep it going. So, yeah.
And I feel like there are a lot of girls out there that would or do enjoy lifting weights and training, but they're just unaware of that there are a lot of women in powerlifting.
For sure, yeah.
Even though it's probably majority male dominated, I think. I'm not sure. That's just talking off the top of my head. But they don't realize that there are plenty of strong women out there in the sport.
For sure.
So was there anybody up until when you first started or up until now that a female powerlifter that you looked up to?
Yeah, so there's a couple. I love talking about them. So I think I kind of mentioned before me going to my first world meet, I knew one powerlifter who was going, and that was Claire McKenzie. She doesn't lift anymore. She was in 84. She won worlds in 2017 as a junior, and that was her last year. She was the person I looked up to for a while, because she was just so poised in what she did. She was never talking about herself and how good she was. She was always promoting the sport in the best way possible, but besides that, she was always so helpful. I mean, I remember I DM'd her for the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love you, I think you're the best, and she was just so nice about it, and, like, now she's one of my best friends, but, man, I looked up to her a lot when I first started, and then I kind of got to know more about the sport, and Kelsey McCarthy, I don't know if you guys know who that is. I'm sure you do. She's a 72, world champion, national champion, an all-around a great athlete. But it goes back to that, like, same perspective. She's never boasting about herself, and she's always very helpful. I know that, like, a few months ago, I needed a suit, and I didn't have one that fit me. And I messaged her on Instagram. She was like, of course. Like, you know, she never had that mentality that she's better than anybody. And that, I mean, it just really goes to show, like, the type of people that are in this sport. But I look up to her because she's the best 72 in the game. She's so humble about everything she does. So, yeah, those two girls.
I think that's a big part of the sport is people that are willing to take extra time and help the up-and-coming lifters
For sure.
Learn more and train better. Because without that, there's a lot of knowledge that doesn't get passed down
For
from
sure.
generation
Yeah, I
to
agree with you.
generation.
And that's how the sport grows, too.
No, it definitely is.
Absolutely. So, let's see. Alban, anything else you want to add?
So you're talking about, like, a community base.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, with most sports there's a community base, but I feel like in powerlifting, when you go to a meet and it's your first meet or something, you're like, oh my gosh, these people are probably going to be really intimidating, or they're going to be won't want to talk to me at all. But you get there and you're like, oh my gosh, they're all so friendly and nice. They want to help you. And then, so what do you think about the community base? Do you think it's growing? What are some ways that you think it can grow?
Man, I think the powerlifting community has increased tremendously since I first started. But I think like it really starts in collegiate powerlifting, and I think we're seeing that growth a lot. Like since when it started, I mean, like in 2017 is when collegiate teams, and even before that, I mean, collegiate teams were a really big thing. But now I just feel like it's way more prevalent that like collegiate lifting is such a big aspect of USAPL in itself. I mean, like you have UTSA, you have LA Tech, you have UT, you have Sam Houston. I mean, you have Midland. You have all these big schools with lifters that are incredible. I mean, lifters that are going to go very, very far after they get out of their collegiate career, and all of them, if like most, if not all, are so kind and are so willing to help that I think that's what's making our community stronger. Um, yeah.
Go on one more thing. I'm really into training and how different people train and everything.
For sure.
So, what about recovery? What are your like top recovery methods?
Okay. So as of like I mean like the past like 6 months, I have a grade 3 meniscus tear and a grade 2 MCL tear. I did collegiate cheerleading at Midland, and I was a tumbler, and I just kind of landed wrong. My knee gave out, got an MRI. That's what happened. I did physical therapy for it, and then COVID hit, and so it was kind of like I can't go anywhere. So right now, I take everything really easy. Zach doesn't give me too much volume just because he knows like I don't want to put that stress on my knee. But before that, I usually have a 4-day split or 5-day. It depends on what week and what I'm training for. I usually take, and this is like really on like a week to week basis. I'll take 2 days in between. Sometimes I'll take one. It just depends on how I feel. It just depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing equipment, I'll take 2 days in between each equipped session. If I'm doing raw, it's usually one. I'll never train throughout the whole week though. That's something I've found that doesn't work for me. It's something that really, really gasses me really, really quick. I don't know if that's because of a girl. I don't know if it's because I'm maybe a little chunky sometimes. I couldn't tell you. When I'm cutting those specifically, and especially this past year when I was cutting to 63, I had to take extra time to recover because on top of me trying to lose 15 pounds, I was also in one of the like hardest cycles I've ever been in. And so, I take 1 or 2 days in between my sessions. I like doing Epsom salt baths. Those are my favorite. Those really work for me for whatever reason. I usually I do intra-carbs during my training all the time. Mm-hmm. And then on days that I'm not training, I'll increase my carb load even more. That's just what I've seen like work for me and help me recover faster. So yeah.
Do y'all have a nutritionist there that helps y'all?
At Tech, we do not.
Yeah.
Me and nutrition, for a while, I had somebody helping with my macros, and then I kind of learned how to do it on my own just from different people. As of right now, I'm starting with Alex Roth. He's a nutritionist. He's awesome. I'm just starting with him in the next week. I've only heard good things about him, though. But that's just because I'm going to make a really big cut to 63, and I just want to be in the best position possible for me to do that. But before that, I was doing my own nutrition. I was doing my own macros, and it was just a lot of me asking people other things, looking up things, seeing what worked for me, messing with numbers and everything like that.
So trial and error, and just figuring out what works for you, what you like. I feel like a lot of people, like, of course, bros, we want to go to the gym every day.
For sure.
And when you love it that much, you're like, oh, I want to get in there. I'm going to miss out if I don't go.
For sure.
But you need that little bit extra. If you look at the Australian strength coach, he was the coach for Thor, the Mountain from Game of Thrones.
Okay, yeah.
Like, they didn't have really a lot of volume in their sessions because he's lifting so much weight that he has to recover.
Yeah.
And it comes down to recovery. Once you can recover, well, you train as much as you can recover from.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. So thank you for going over that split. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to see what different people do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, I think that's how I've learned, because I was around so many people that cut so much to get into their weight class that it was just talking to people, really. It's just asking people what they do, asking people what works for them and what doesn't, and just trying different things. And so I think I have a solid, base down of how I can cut and how I can get to my weight class. So yeah, hopefully. I mean, knock on wood, it works this next time around.
I wanted to ask you, what are some of your short-term, as far as, maybe in the next couple months, and then also some long-term goals for you?
Interesting. Interesting question. Short-term goals, man, I mean, and I think I said this earlier, my training's been on and off just because gym's closing and, other things. I moved, obviously, to Louisiana, and then I moved from Nebraska back to Texas, and then I've just been going around, like, everywhere. So, my training's been spotty, so short-term goal to be able to get back in training, in a routine again. And I think that'll start when, practices start here at Tech. I have people and training partners behind me. So that's a short-term goal. But a long-term goal, I'm obviously going to compete at Collegiate Nationals in Baton Rouge. I want to be a collegiate national champion, whether that be in the 63 or the 72 or whatever new weight classes they have. I don't really know, to be honest with you. I want to be a national champion. I want to go to Worlds. I'd love to be able to compete for the open team spot, and I feel like I have what it takes if I'm training the right way. So, yeah, I want to be a collegiate national champion. I want to be able to call myself that before I graduate, to be quite honest with you. And I want to go to Worlds again. International meets and being on teams like that are the best experiences that I've ever had within the sport. And to be able to do it again alongside like some of my best friends is something that I'm striving for. So, yeah.
So it sounds like you don't have a specific goal of, when I hit this total, I'm done. You just want to go as long as you can, as long as your body will let you go.
Oh, for sure.
Just go as far as you can.
Right now, I obviously transferred here. I'm a senior. I graduate this coming year, and then next year I'll graduate with my master's. And so, obviously, powerlifting for me right now is very prevalent in my life, and I know at one point I'm going to have to put it all the way on the back burner because I'm going to have a career and I'm going to have other things I need to focus on. But I don't see myself like placing a number on when I'm going to stop or placing a number on I want to hit this. I just want my total to increase. I guess I'd love to squat 500 pounds in a meet. That'd be awesome. But I don't think there's a set number for me. It's me doing my best and being the best lifter I can be. And making 63, hopefully, because I have trouble with that sometimes. So, yeah.
Weight cutting, it's not fun. You're hungry all the time.
Yeah, so, I mean, I competed as a 148 in high school. And then I got a little chunky, and I competed as a 72 at Midland. And up until this last year, I was like, I'm going to cut to 63. So after Worlds in Canada, I said I'm going to cut to 63. And I mean, like, I was doing really well. I was really proud of myself. The meet week came along. Mother Nature came. Sorry, you guys are boys. Apologize. I was
Wait, during the meet week?
I was retaining a lot of my water from my water cut. So I missed weight at a meet I was competing in December to qualify for collegiates that was going to be in Pennsylvania. Then I was going to compete at a meet in February to qualify again. And then I tore my meniscus and my MCL. So that wasn't going to happen. So I was going to compete at 72 at collegiates. And then we know what happened with collegiates. So I like to say that everything happened for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but I never missed competing at 63, but I've missed weight once. So hopefully this next time around, whenever I compete next, hopefully in December or January, I'll be able to make it, but there's no promises.
Absolutely. I noticed that you competed 5 times in 2019. Was that difficult, or well, tell us about that.
Yeah. Are you on open powerlifting?
I was looking at it earlier.
Okay, I'm looking at it also so I can know what meets they are because yeah, so obviously I competed at collegiate nationals with Midland. So like the story behind like kind of that, I was aiming to try to get the spot for the Canada team for Worlds in Canada. I had a horrible meet at collegiate nationals. I almost bombed out on every lift. I think I was so stressed that I lost so much weight the night before. I weighed in probably like 6 pounds lighter than I was that whole week. I was just so nervous, and it's not that I never competed at a national meet. I had gone to international meets before that and national meets, but I was just so nervous. I felt like there was like a plate on me to be able to place high enough so that I could go to Worlds, and like not only that, but we were trying to place as a team. Our girls team was trying to win. I ended up getting fourth at that meet, and I had already talked to Tim about me competing at Open Nationals, and that was going to be my chance that if I needed another meet that I was going to compete at Open so I could make the total so I could make the team for Canada. I competed at Opens. I had a totally different mindset. I mean, people will tell you, like, I was a totally different person than I was in Ohio. I still didn't get the total high enough to get the automatic spot, so it went to the girl who won collegiates. I was so lucky because, and I say this, and if anybody's going to listen to anything that I'm saying here, it's listen to this part. I was the 7th alternate. Everybody before me had declined the spot to Canada. And I was the 7th person that Zach Cooper, who's now the coach of the team, and this is before he was my coach, but he was like, hey, I want to offer you the spot. Will you go? And I said yes faster than anybody's ever said yes before. That was it. That's what I was training for. But at the same time, I was training to go to Estonia for the University Cup for Midland, and that was a raw meet. And that didn't take too much strain out of me just because I was just implementing a little bit heavier raw training to go into my equip cycle. So it kind of helped me, really, in all honesty. But juggling all those meets and not being able to recover, I mean, it killed my body so much. And then I competed in December of 2019, and that's when I was doing my big cut. So it killed my body. I mean, I think I took 2 weeks off after coming back from Canada. It was a lot of stress put on me, both like mentally and physically. I took a lot of time to like sit back and like establish what goals I had and what I wanted to do after I came back from Canada. And that was a lot of like, do I want to cut to 63? Am I still happy doing equipped? Like, do I want to compete this year at all? Like, can my body take it? And I'm glad I did. I wish I would have taken more time. Because I feel like, everybody has those little injuries, but they were just happening a little too much. My shoulder that I dislocated in 2017 gave me so much headache while I was doing 3 equipped cycles in 2019. But I say it's all worth it, and everything happens for a reason. And, all those meets meant something to me. Collegiates, I told myself I was going to come back the next year I competed at collegiates and be a collegiate national champion. At Opens, my goal was to make it to the team, and by God's grace, I mean, like, I got that alternate spot. And then I placed 3rd at Worlds, and that was me telling myself I could do it. So yeah, I mean, it took a lot out of me, but I wouldn't have changed it.
You've definitely gone through adversity.
Yeah, sure.
But that's what makes a champion. You stick with it, even though I feel like after those, like you got injured and everything, you were like, all right, when can I do it again?
Yeah, I mean, Zach kind of got after me because when I told him I tore my meniscus and my MCL, I said, hey, don't freak out. I remember the text. I was like, hey, don't freak out. I went to get an MRI. He said this, but I'm going to be okay. Don't worry about it. I'll just put on tighter knee sleeves and we'll be fine.
Yep, all fine.
And he was like, excuse me, what? And then I think
I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, and then he FaceTimed me, I think, like 4 times before I answered. And I was like, okay, Zach, like, I'm really sorry. I meant to tell you this sooner, but I didn't want to. And I mean, I got back to training. It hurt, and I was in pain, and I cried a lot because I'm a crier. But it all meant something to me, and it's all like something that I can write in like my like journey book, and that's just like, you know, like whatever. But it's all something that I can say like this all happened because of this, and like the day that I can call myself a world champion, I'm gonna look back at everything that's happened before and tell myself that it all happened for a reason.
Absolutely. If you have that champion mindset, no matter what gets thrown in your way on your powerlifting journey, injuries, anything else, you're going to take it and you're going to say, okay, this happened, but I'm going to keep training, I'm going to keep pushing, and I'm going to keep
For
working
sure.
toward those goals that I have no matter what happens.
For sure.
Absolutely. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I mean, do you guys have any more questions? I don't really
How about
know.
this? Last question. If you could give any piece of advice to powerlifters starting their journey, what would you tell them?
Man, I knew you were going to ask me this, and I've been thinking about it for the past, like, 3 hours.
No pressure.
Oh, no pressure at all, right? If I could give anybody starting their powerlifting journey advice, I think it goes to what I said earlier. Who cares what people are saying? Who cares if you're not the strongest? Who cares if you go into a meet and you bomb out? Who cares if you lose? Who cares, really? Because if it's going to make you happy, you're going to do it. If you think that you're getting stronger and you're happy in the position you're in, then keep striving for it. If you're afraid of people judging you, who cares? Post your lifts on Instagram. Tell people how excited you are that you're lifting. Like, who cares? Because at the end of the day, if it's making you happy, it's going to impact your life in different ways than just your strength itself. So, yeah.
Wow, I like that.
That's a pretty good response right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did that on the fly. I'm really proud of myself.
Yeah, so this has been a hell of an episode. Alexandra, where can people find you on Instagram?
My lifting Instagram is Alexandra Camille 72 kg. Follow that one. Please don't try to follow my personal one. Thank you.
Just follow the lifting page. See what
Yeah.
see what you're doing in training.
Yes.
But once again, thank you so much for your time coming on the show. We appreciate having you and hearing your stories of your journey.
Yeah, thank you for asking me. I felt like a celebrity when you DM'd me. Like,
No,
I was like,
no,
wow,
honestly,
I'm cool. Somebody knows
we
who
started
I
this
am.
up, and I started hitting up all these big time powerlifters, and I was like, there's no way that any of them will actually want to come on our new podcast. And then a lot of people like answered, like you and Jesus. I was extremely surprised that
Yeah.
a
Well, like,
IPF medalist would
I'm
come
a
on our show.
journalism major, and so I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I was like, I love this, you know. This is great. And I think it's really cool that you guys are doing it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Like I said, I think I'm like a celebrity now. I'm cool. I'm relevant.
Yeah, for sure. So everybody go give Alexandra a follow. As always, you can find us on Instagram at triple.b.podcast. Altman.
You can find me at Big's College Strength.
And me at Seth.Todd76. Thank you everybody for listening today. Have a good week.